we're not going to tell him this, but he's just going to have to swim for 4 hours until the tide changes and pulls him in. And I went all the way up the Cook Strait.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo podcast, where we bring you interviews and topics to help you live well and swim well. Conversations especially meaningful for masters swimmers and anyone striving to perform better in the water or in life. We're here to champion you. And now your host, Kelly Pallas.
Today, we are stepping out of the controlled lane lines of the pool to dive headfirst into the chaotic, unpredictable world of ultra-marathon open water swimming with elite endurance athlete Steve Moby Leitch. Steve is actively taking on the grueling Ocean 7 challenge, having recently just conquered the Strait of Gibraltar by swimming between Europe and Africa while dodging commercial freighters. What makes his achievements even more remarkable is his driving force. Steve is celebrating over 15 years of sobriety and treats these grueling ocean crossings as sweat equity to raise funds for long-term sobriety living facilities, a journey of resilience, which is chronicled in his book Against the Current and the documentary. Today, we're going to dig deep into the extreme mental fortitude, pain tolerance, and athletic strategy required to conquer the open oceans. So please welcome to the show, Steve Moby Leitch. Steve, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
You just did the Strait of Gibraltar. Why is that such a hard swim?
So yeah, we swam the Strait of Gibraltar last Tuesday, so 6 days ago. Just got back in Friday. I think the weather conditions, the currents, the way the Mediterranean is coming out and the Atlantic's coming in, it's just a really, and it's funneling between like 9 miles. So you've just got a lot of water moving. Not to mention Tarifa, Spain, is the wind surf capital of the world. So that means we're down there the first day we're down there and we're watching people do things on kite surfs I've never seen in my life. But the chances of us swimming are 30 knots less in wind, I mean, you can't go, gosh, they said something like, if the wind is over 10 knots wind speed on Tarifa side, then the Moroccan government will not let you start the swim. If it's under 10 knots, and it goes over 10 knots during the swim, they're okay with that. But if it's over that, then they're worried you're either going to get blown into their port or down into their zone that you're not allowed to land on. So it's like you have to be able to swim pretty much straight across. So we had two false starts. Like we're about to head to the harbor and they canceled our swim Wednesday and Thursday. Then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we couldn't swim because the currents were just too strong with the way the water was moving. And then Monday was out because we had 40 knot gusts. And then Tuesday, there was like this sliver of a window to get out in the morning. And we're like, okay, I think we can go. And it got a little bumpy, but we got it done.
How long did it take?
4 hours, 44 minutes.
Okay, so you had a pretty straight swim then. I mean, you must have had a good pilot to get straight across there.
Yeah, the wind was and the waves were kind of pushing at our back. We're swimming, four of us. Unfortunately, one guy didn't make it across, but three of us did, and it was kind of crazy going. I just swam from one continent to another. I've done countries before, but I've never done intercontinental. And
that's what they say is the coolest thing about doing the Strait of Gibraltar, right? That you start on one continent, go to another continent.
Yeah.
So when there are four of you starting together, do you is it four solo swims and you just have to be a certain distance apart, or can you be in a pack, or how does that work?
So for this swim, it's a group, so you've got to be all around the same speed. And we had all agreed to like 3.5 kilometers an hour. So that was kind of how we got grouped up because we're all chasing Ocean 7. Um, and that worked for us. So
yeah. So you right now are living in South Carolina, but you're
Hmm.
from Scotland. How did
That's right.
that happen?
Yeah, so I swam for Clemson University um, in 1991, going into 92, and then quit swimming end of my freshman year, and did not swim again until 2017.
So you got recruited to swim for Clemson.
Yeah,
Who
from
was your
Scotland.
coach then?
It was uh, I get this coach that recruited me ended up leaving, and we had this other guy, Jim Sheridan, who took
Oh,
over.
oh,
And
Jim Sheridan was the head coach there. Was Mitzi Kramer
yeah,
swimming there when
she
you were
was,
there?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Mitzi's a good friend of mine. She's also been on the show, and so you definitely had a Division 1 swimmer background, which is why I wanted to drill down on that a little bit. And that's how you ended up. So you just stayed after you left Clemson. You
Hmm.
stayed in the US, got married to your
Hmm.
wife Kelly, who is a big part, like she's like your partner in crime on all of these swims. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's such a beautiful part of your story and your documentary, and how, she's such a big supporter.
Yeah. So to back up a little bit, going through drug and alcohol addiction and what I call spiritual, physical, relational bankruptcy. Um, I went through a divorce and, just really didn't understand relationships and things like that. And so when I did get remarried, I settled into my faith and then settled into my physical and then into my relational, kind of like who I was. Kelly and I got married in 2014, and it was kind of like, whatever I do has to be best for the family and then everything on the outside. So we always work from the house out, not we're working from out to bring into the house. So that when I say I fell back into swimming, it was like um, I had a manager who just started. He was an Ironman triathlete, and he learned about that. I used to swim, and I'm like, it's been 30 years. He goes, well, try open water. I'm like, okay, well, sure. I'll sign up for a race 6 weeks from now. And I swam a 2.4 mile swim. And Kelly, of course, was there, but I got hooked in the open water. So I found that I was actually really good at open water swimming, slow, what I would consider slow compared to when I was a kid, but I enjoyed it. And she enjoyed being outdoors. She enjoyed kayaking when I was swimming. And it was something we could do together. So when we got onto the channel swims, it was just really important for me for her to be there because one, it felt really supportive, but two, I just knew that no one would watch over me on that boat more than she would, and she'd be able to read me. And what we found over the last 3 years is it's actually like really helped our marriage as well in communication, how to like convey things under pressure, how to, not, like the first few swims, I'd be really sick and I'd hide it from everyone because I think they were going to pull me out. And now it's like as soon as I feel sick or as soon as I've got a cramp, I tell them and they can get me the appropriate food or medications that I need. So yeah, she's a star. And this last swim, she had a GoPro in her head. She was holding a GoPro and she was feeding two of us. So where she's come in the last 3 years in these swims is like she's got um, 6 channels under her belt of being on every boat, and she's been sick on like 3 of them. But she's absolutely amazing and supporting me, and I think there's nothing better than sharing with someone you love and care for, like an incredible experience, an adventure. So it's been fun, yeah.
Now, did she have any athletic background, or did she just decide to jump in there and be, that have that background without the background?
Yeah, no, I mean she like played some tennis. I mean she did some swimming. She was never really super athletic, but I got to tell you, she started CrossFit a couple years ago, and she likes doing that just to keep fit. I think she's a great runner, but more she's super organized. and she's detailed. So like all of a sudden on these swims, we start having lists and we start having, you know, um, debriefs after the swims and going through the list of talking about things. So like she's created a whole system for our swims that when we come home, like we go through the list, wash everything, repack everything with the list, and the bag is packed, ready to go for the next channel that we don't have to think about because it's ready to go. And so she brought her skill set to organization to the adventures. And that's been incredibly helpful for me because I would be kind of like, yeah, I got my cap, goggles, swimsuit, let's go, you know.
Mhm.
Where she's like, she's got her pack, she's got her medications, she's got tape, she's got zip ties, she's got, you know, everything. Like if the boat's sinking, I think she's got a bilge pump, you know, somewhere hidden in one of the bags. But yeah, she's incredible.
That is fantastic. So you were you a distance swimmer at Clemson? I mean, were you a distance swimmer?
Yeah, I was 400 free, 1500 free, 400 IM.
Okay, so you
So
have a little background in what it's like to prep for those races, and certainly very different than how one would prep for these big channel swims. How do you prepare? Like, what is your training going into something? Because it looks like it, you know, it kind of. I looked at all the different ocean swims. It looks like on average, and I'm just going to say average, they're 12 hours of swimming, 8 hours of
sure.
swimming, something like that. Very different than I consider myself a distance swimmer, but my top long distance is going to be a mile in the pool, so it's 19, 20 minutes. So how does one prepare for these open water if someone's listening and they're thinking, someday I want to do the X channel or straight or what how do you prepare?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that I've been getting asked more and more, and I'm like, okay, I've really got to put a definition to this. So, what I've kind of come up with is you talk about endurance sports, right? Being having an endurance athlete, and endurance isn't actually a fitness. Endurance is the ability to endure for an extended period of time through pain, unforeseen circumstances, and problems until you reach your goal. So what I do in training is if I'm sick, I'm training. I've got meetings all day, every day, working long hours, I'm training. If if I've got family events, I'm training. Like it's constantly making sure the schedule and everything works, but I'm working at a very fatigued level all the time so that I endure, I endure, I endure. And it's making it making myself in such hurt in such a way that when I go into maybe a long Saturday swim, I've done two training sessions on a Friday that I'm so sore from lifting and swimming and doing things that I'm simulating the last 4 hours of the swim on a Saturday morning. So I'm constantly trying to create a pain cave that simulates the hardest parts of the swim. So when life is going sideways, as it does, like life throws you the unexpected when you have a blended family, 6 kids, 4 grandchildren, 2 son-in-laws, a daughter-in-law, businesses. You can imagine we have a lot going on. So you have to be present for them, but you still have to train. And, I get sick from the stress and training and overload, but I have to endure. So I've worked on that a lot. And I always say, I think I've seen a lot of people train for perfect conditions. I train for the absolute worst to happen to me. So if the worst happens to me in training, then it's not as hard to overcome in a swim. Um, and truth be told, it's not always swimming. I don't just swim all the time. I do a lot of weight training. Now that I've turned 52, I do a lot more mobility training, resistance bands. I'm at the chiropractor a lot more.
Yeah.
I'm getting IV drips. There's a lot more. I'm actually like, okay, well, I should probably start looking at making sure I'm getting enough sleep. for all this. So it's definitely,
Wait. You don't make sure you
yeah,
get enough sleep with all you're doing? That's not right, like top of the list.
yeah, I've never been a great sleeper. Um, so I've had to force myself to, I just crested on average like 6 hours, 45 minutes of sleep last year. And that was like me pushing, and my goal was to get over seven, this year. Um,
So what? So my mind is thinking, when you're training that hard, are you just not so exhausted when you get into bed that you can sleep longer than 6.5 hours or so?
so there's something switches in me where the more I train, the kind of the more awake I am.
Mm.
Um, so, but also I have noticed in my 40s, going into my 50s, like a 15-minute nap at like noon, you know, like boom, that sets me as well. So now when I'm sick, I'll sleep like a baby. Like my body will just shut down. Like I get sick, I'm ready to go to sleep. Um, And, we've come back from Gibraltar, traveling, long traveling, got in super early, 3:30 in the morning, Friday morning. I was up at 6, worked till 10 o'clock at night, and then got up and went swam Saturday morning, then ran to get my mother-in-law, took her up to a baby shower for one of our daughters in North Carolina on Saturday, then drove home. Then we're unpacking, went to church Sunday morning, and, I came home from church. I'm like, I have allergies or don't feel good. And I slept for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So my body, when my body demands it, it will take it.
Yes. So in an average week, like when you're not on the road and you're just training, how many swims a week are there compared to, like lifting or mobility or some of that?
Sure.
And
So
and distances.
yeah, sure. So going into Japan last June and North Channel in August, I was swimming around seven, 5 to 7 times a week, and doing anywhere from 35 to 45 kilometers in the pool, or in the lakes between the two. Um, then after I got back from North Channel, I was swimming 3 times a week, and because I had switched to short course, I continued to swim 3 short times a week because I cannot stand short course. It makes me dizzy. I don't like it just it doesn't even feel like swimming anymore. It's like I'm just doing flip turns all the time.
Sure.
Um, but so I only swam 3 times a week for about an hour and a half each time going up to Cook Strait. But then in Thanksgiving, we always do the 100 100s. One of my favorite things. But I do a 10,000 before the 100 100s every year. So I end up doing 20,000 in the pool, yards
Yeah.
that day. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Now, do you swim with the masters group?
I sure do. Greenville Splash. Shout out.
Greenville Splash. Okay. Do you know my
Yes,
friend Carolyn Moore?
absolutely. She's my
Oh,
coach.
your coach? Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
love Carolyn. Yeah, she's a sweetie. Well, that's cool.
She's the
So
best.
so is that masters community helpful? I mean, do they support
Yes.
you and follow you and
Oh, yeah. Leslie, Carolyn, absolutely amazing. They put on a great program, but we've got a lot of ex-swimmers and master swimmers, and then we've got a lot of professional triathletes that we train with. So we've got like, we train really hard. And it's
yeah.
funny, some people go back to their old master's programs and they're like, uh, we didn't do anything. And we're like getting after it. But yeah, I think I started swimming with them, gosh, maybe 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago in August. And it's probably one of the best things that I've done in just being back in that community. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know if I'm ever going to do a master's in the pool event, but I love our
Okay, we
master.
gotta
I
we
love
gotta
our
talk
team.
about that. Yeah, we gotta talk about that. So first, or no, second, why is that? But first, when I think of open water swimmers, especially ones that have to go out there and swim for 12 hours, I looked at the, some of your videos of you swimming, and your tempo is very relaxed, which of course, if you're going to swim for that long, you've got to be relaxed and not utilizing a whole lot of energy. How do you compare, like, say, 10 100s on an interval? Are you training hard and swimming fast when you're preparing for something where you're going to really wanting to be slow? And I say slow meaning, not probably compared to most people who would think of slow, because you're, a former Division 1 swimmer. But you know what the question is? Just how
Yeah.
fast you train compared to how fast you actually race, or how slow you it's not even a race. How fast do you train compared to how you swim in these long endurance swims?
Yeah, sure. So you're swimming around 2 miles an hour for these swims. And you hardly ever get a straight line. So like Cook Strait was supposed to be 14 miles. I swam 21. I mean,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great story. But in the pool, I try and sprint as I'm not good at sprinter. I'm just my arms, my twitch muscles just don't go like that. And plus it really hurts. Like that sharp pain of sprinting. I'm
Yeah.
like, who likes this? I like dull, long pain, you know. But I've realized that pain is pain, and if I can really push through, it's all about like creating that mindset, right? If I can push through that pain and continue sprinting and get faster and constantly driving for the wall, negative splitting things, holding times, then it's not actually that I'm training my body for that for the swim. I'm training my mind to say, when my mind goes, you know what, this really hurts, and I'm really not having fun anymore. Well, I have that conversation. I'm like, well, we're doing fine. There's nothing injured. Nobody's shooting at us. Let's let's just keep going. Let's, one hand in front of the other. Let's focus on our technique. Let's focus on these waves. Let's focus on, where we are with the boat. And you kind of like have these conversations because you remind yourself that you've pushed your limits in the pool. You've pushed your limits in the gym. You've pushed your limits in your schedule between family, work, swimming, and everything. You're constantly like learning how to endure. And that's more of what the sprinting and timing is for me, is learning how to endure.
Yes, and that's so accurate. As far as it's funny. Literally, I had that question, like, when you're in pain in a race, where does your mind go? What is that dialogue that you have? And it's very similar. I've talked to obviously a lot of endurance athletes, because I always love that question. When you're in pain, what are you thinking about? And it sounds like, you answered that perfectly. So, however, that said, I can get into some pretty serious pain in a 19-minute mile. It's
Sure.
like you've got to go out hard. You've got to be in pain. For me, I'm in pain at like the 200. So, and then I say, can I hold this at the 4, at the 6, at the 8? And then the last 1,000 is always a conversation of, one stroke, one turn, just one stroke at a time, and how it's hurting. But that is such a different animal than 12 hours of that. So what's the longest you've really been in pain, where you just worked yourself through it? And was there a different level of, now I'm just thinking about my technique, and I'm thinking about good stroke mechanics, and maybe I'm singing a song, and like, has there been a
Yeah.
race that just really tested you? I'd love to hear the
Yeah.
story of the
The Cook
one that
Strait.
was supposed to be 8 miles and came to be, no, supposed to be
Yeah.
14 and was 21. What happened there?
Yeah. So the two swims that come to mind, um, English Channel. Callie was puking before I jumped off the boat in the pitch dark at 2:30 in the morning. And I'm kissing my wife on the forehead. And I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, she's sick. I'm about to puke. Jumping into this pitch black void.
Is it because
try
of the sea that was making
Oh,
you?
yeah, it
Okay.
was
Yeah.
completely, it was
Okay.
very lumpy that morning. And that swim, I ended up being sick within 45 minutes into a 13-hour and 14-minute swim. At 4 hours, my hip flexor on my right side is completely cramped up, and I could not release it in any way, shape, or form to the point where I strained it. It was so bad. So I had one leg completely out from 4 hours to 13 hours. And it was my first really cold swim, which was 62 degrees, which isn't horrendous. But for every pool swimmer here who complains when the water temperature hits
Oh.
79, the hardest part is getting in the pool. I'm like, no, the hardest part is getting in the ocean. Um, so that was a case of like, I just had to just keep going. And there's a lot of prayer, but then there's things like, that's when I found out we're having a grandson. Kelly put it up on the boat on a pad. That's when there was one of my observers was smoking, and it made me so mad that I could smell his cigarettes on the boat while I'm swimming. And I was like, but I used that to just keep going. And then you come into beautiful moments where a seal comes up and plays with you and then nuzzles your feet. And you're like, this is the coolest thing in the world. Oh my gosh, there's the cliffs of Dover. Oh my gosh, there's jellyfish that don't look like they're going to hurt like the ones in Hawaii. There's, oh, there's a warm spot, there's a cold spot. Like you start getting to all these different feelings and flow. But same kind of thing in Cook Strait, 15 minutes. Well, back up. Cook Strait, we grounded the boat on a rock before I'd even jumped in. So we had to get it off this rock. And I'm like, this swim might not happen. So we open the bottom, see if there's water flooding in, if we're going to be sinking. But then I jump in and it's a lot colder than I actually thought it was going to be. And I cramped within 15 minutes. I mean, hard cramped in my Achilles on my left side. And I just stopped and I was like, Cal, get me a banana packet. So I'm a baby. I don't like bananas, but I'll have Gerber banana packets. They taste great. So I got one of those and kept swimming and worked it all out. But we hit a point mid-channel. I got mid-channel and in about 4 hours. And I'm like, we're doing great. And as soon as you say something like we're doing great in a channel swim, Mother Nature goes, oh, excuse me, you rang? And the waves from the middle of the channel picked up to 4 to 6 foot swells and just started pushing me north. And apparently in the boats, they tried to get me through it, but it was like swimming across a really fast river. You cannot go get across it. You're kind of going down it until you get across. And they said, I hate to tell, we're not going to tell him this, but he's just going to have to swim for 4 hours until the tide changes and pulls him in. And I went all the way up the Cook Strait. It was that we were laughing the next day. We're like, well, you saw the entire Cook Strait, I mean, it was all the way up until the tide changed and then sucked me down in. And even then you're like, well, how did that feel when it sucked you in? It was great. We're heading in the right direction. I see these islands called the Brothers. That's where I think we're heading. We're about to land on them. I'm like, which island are we going to? And the pilot, Phil Rush, goes, no, we're going around the bottom. We've got another 5 kilometers to go. Want us to go around the bottom of the islands. I'm like, you what? Because for the last 2 hours, I've been hunting down these islands thinking that's the closest point. We're heading to those. And I'm just devastated, like devastated. So I swam off. I was like, I'm going to that island. And then I recalibrated and went, you know what? He knows what we're doing. Why would I ever question it? And I come back to the boat and I just lock in. I'm like, okay, one hand in front of the other. That's the smallest thing I can do right now until my mind gets recentered. One hand in front of the other. Okay, I can handle this pace. And actually, when we got into the islands, we got sucked around and I saw how fast we were moving. I'm like, hey, and we did 2K pretty, like really fast. So all of a sudden we're down to 3K and and he's like, that's where we're finishing. and the waves were hitting right behind me. I was like, okay, this is pushing me. This is pushing me. And you start to just feel that I can do this, because I'll always go back to this one story. For everyone who's listening, yes, I beat addiction, and by the grace of God. And that's the second hardest thing I've ever done in life. The hardest thing I've ever done in life is drop my children off after visitation at their mother's house. There's no pain that's even come close to that in swimming. And I remember my personal things that I've gone through, that God has got me through. If I can endure those and still be breathing and get to do these, then I can do one more stroke. If I can do one more stroke for the guy who's battling addiction, I can do another stroke for the family who's been affected by addiction. If I can take one more stroke to raise money for someone who's battling addiction or needs mentorship, then I can take another stroke. And I start having these conversations so that I just don't quit. I endure, endure, endure. But yeah, it's been hairy. It's been really, really hairy.
Yeah. Well, I love that you're you have a balance of having bad things that are going to come up in the swim, from nausea to freezing to having your Achilles lock up and your hip lock up, to really having gratitude for things in there, from the beautiful sea life and the beautiful scenery. And I don't know, there's some saying that we need 3 to 5 positive thoughts to wipe out one negative thought. So
Mm.
it takes a lot more. Do you and obviously you're thinking about your kids and swimming for addiction recovery. Do you consciously have to go there? Like, when you're swimming and you're in a bad place, do you consciously think, okay, I've got to really change my focus?
Yeah. Sometimes the brain will just, when the brain's in a good flow state, I just let it go. But then when it was trying to put on the handbrake, as I call it, the mental
Yeah.
handbrake, it's like,
Hmm.
no, no, you're not getting to make this decision right now, you know?
Yeah.
And, but the thing is, you've got to have the right teams around you too. So in that Cook Strait, I had my bride, Kelly. I had my incredible friend, Grania, who's from Northern Ireland, who lives in New Zealand, massive channel swimmer. And she's on the boat and she's just encouraging me. And, he's the fastest English Channel three-way ever in history, and he
Wow.
got the two-way at the same time. So like you've got all this experience, and Phil's just like no nurture, all nature. Grania's energy, Kelly's just like, you're doing great, you're doing great, you're doing great, like, so you start feeding this and going, if all the team's doing their job really well, I then have a responsibility to do my job really well. And it's just like
Yes.
at a swim meet, that it's not just the swimmers, it's the starter, the timer, the event coordinator. Everyone has a job. There's lots of people doing the job, and everyone has to do their job really well for the swim meet to go on, right? The coaches have to do a good job. The parents or whoever is involved, maybe not master as parents, but there's just more than just the swimmer. And when you remember that, you kind of go, I'm part of something. So let me just keep putting one hand in front of the other.
Yes. And when you say that you're swimming for people overcoming addiction, how does that actually translate out into the world?
Yeah. So I've kind of Steve Moby Leitch. Moby came from my grandfather name. I'm grandpa, two granddaughters, two grandsons. And so they call me Moby. And it was great because it became this really easy marketing thing for, Moby Dick, Steve Moby Leitch swimmer. Um, so I share a lot about addiction recovery. I'm heavily involved in Greenville in the upstate with Overcomers, Miracle Hill Overcomers rehab program. And so I'm constantly now that people know who I am, I'm constantly getting messages. Hey, can we have a conversation about this? Can you pray for me this? Can you? And I think it's just putting a voice to your past that says your past doesn't define you, and your 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 pain becomes your purpose. So like my pains, the things that I went through, I can connect with people on that as long as I don't hide them. And I kind of got that framework even from channel swimming. Whereas if I don't hide my pain and I tell the team about my pains, then they can do something about it. Like, oh, I'm feeling sick. Okay, well, here's a nausea pill. Or, hey, I'm feeling dehydrated. Okay, we'll put some extra water in this. Hey, I'm feeling really calorically down. Okay, we're going to add a little extra in this next one. Hey, we need you to. I remember English Channel, Captain Eddie turned to Herschel, who films everything, and it says, "All right, we're going to need a power hour from Steve." And, and Herschel comes out, and this is like 11 hours in, and Herschel was like, "Hey, Steve, this feeding, go on, we need a power hour. Eddie wants a power hour." And I'm like, okay. And it just the way he delivered the message, I was like, yeah, I'm in. And I pounded for an hour. It might not look like it, but I pushed, but it gave me something to fight for. So I think when we share our needs or pains or our stories, then it allows people to connect with us.
Absolutely. So it's certainly inspirational to know, that people can go from addiction and being financially and spiritually broken, like you said, to being this elite endurance swimmer doing incredible things. So it shows, wow, you can be in a really dark place and then come back and inspire others. One of the things that I always love to ask is, and I'd like to have the before and after, is what
Mm.
what really makes a champion. This is, we talk champions mojo, and the mojo is what's the energy and what's the positive things that we do to become champions. But if there were things that you could look back on in that pre healing, what would you avoid, number one? um
Mm.
and then what would you say really now makes you who you are?
Yeah, that is, I love that question. Because it's a really simple answer for me. I believe I quit swimming and I started going down this path because I was trying to fit in with people. I felt I was insecure about who I was. And I was trying to fit in. And I think a champion mindset is you're on your path, you don't fit in. It doesn't matter if you fit in. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or you don't communicate well, or you just might be misunderstood because this is where you're going and you're so locked into where you're going. That's the kind of champion's mindset. Now, that would be for the Olympian style person. Um, my definition for a champion mindset now is someone special, for me as a husband. Am I showing up in my marriage? Am I connecting with my wife? Am I showing up for my children? Am I connecting with them? What am I like as a grandfather? What am I like as a friend? Then what am I like in business? And then using all that to propel what I'm doing in sports and swimming, not just focusing on sports and swimming and wiping out all this other stuff. So I've reverse engineered it all. So I think the champion mindset is number one, it's okay not to fit in. You know, I think we talk a lot about being the 1%. Well, I believe God made one of us, not 1%. He made one of us. We're individuals. We all have our own purpose. We all have our own gifts or talents or skills. And you can bring those to a team where you're still, you can still be an individual on that team, and you don't have to fit into what everybody else is doing if you really are secure in who you are and why you are created. And I think for me, that's the champion, is knowing that God created me for a purpose to serve others, to love others, and to use my story to serve others.
I love that. That's beautiful. What do you have left? Like, what's your next? Haven't you gotten all seven, or do you have one
No, I've
more?
got, I've got six. I've got one more,
Well,
and this
what's
is
the
the
next one?
this is the best. So we scheduled this out. So I'll on July 19th, we'll
Okay.
take a boat from San Pedro Harbor out to Catalina Island in California, and I'll swim from California to LA to do the last one. So we'll finish on US soil, and that'll be 7 of 7. And as like right now, 6 Americans have done all 7, and 43 people in history have done all 7. But we've got about 9 of us. We're on our last one this summer, so kind of hoping I get under 50 or 50, but either way, I'm really blessed just to be even in this situation. And I'm even more blessed that I get to do it with my wife, and I'm more blessed to do it with our film producer, Herschel Zond. And it looks like some of our kids might to make it to the last one. So that's going to be
Oh, that would
amazing.
be wonderful. The Catalina Channel. From what I hear, that's one of the toughest ones. Is that your understanding?
I got a little secret.
Yeah.
The next swim you do is your hardest swim. That
Oh,
is what
okay.
the next one is always the hardest one. So it's 20 miles. You start swimming somewhere between 11 and 12 o'clock at night. So then it doesn't get light till 6 in the morning. So your first 6.5, 7 hours are dark, right?
Yeah.
So there's that complexity. And I swam through the night in Hawaii. Wow, the bioluminescence are amazing. The stars are like a dome. There's no light pollution, but there'll be light pollution from LA. But things go bump in the night. You've got to work through a lot of like staying focused on the side of the kayak, not what could be circling around you. It's going. They're never easy. If you think they're going to be easy, then you're not respecting the body of water.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
I have a few friends that have swum the Catalina Channel, and they said it gets colder too as you approach the
yeah.
shore, which can be a challenge, I'm sure. But I love that attitude that the next one is the hardest one.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It
All
keeps
right. Well, yeah.
keeps you focused.
So the last question is there anything that I have not asked you that you would like to share?
It was funny. We talk about pool swimming and open water swimming. Uh, I think we touched on it earlier that I'll probably never do a master's.
Oh, yes, yes. That
Yeah,
was the second question.
we never
Thanks for
got back there.
remembering. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I said to Coach Carolyn, I was like, hey, when I turn 70, I'm going hardcore masters. You know, but until then, I'm doing open water swimming. I don't know what it is. It's me understanding who I am. The pool for me is a tool to get me where I want to go in channel swimming. Because I don't live next to the ocean. I live next to lakes. So it's just a tool. But I just don't know why I have this thing that I don't want to compete. Like I tried to dive in the other day off a block, maybe a couple weeks ago or 3 weeks ago for the first time. Like I haven't since I was 18 years old. I have not dove off a block, and I've got the tier open water goggles that I wear, and that's Special Ops 3.0. So as soon as I dive in, they just go weak. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. What am I doing? Why am I trying to dive in? But it's all those little things that I just haven't done in so long. It's not a nervousness. I'm just like, yeah, I just don't know if I want to sit around in a swim meet for an entire weekend. But if I was going to do it, I would definitely do it with my master's team because I think they're great and they're fun to be around. So we can't say never. Maybe when I'm 70.
Never say never. I don't know
Never say
if
never.
I don't know if it's the Lynn Cox of famous open water swimming Lynn Cox, but I'm heading to the Greensboro Spring Nationals in 2 weeks. And, it's the U.S. Masters Nationals. And in my age group, I see Lynn Cox is entered. And I'm like, oh, I'm fangirling out because
Yeah.
she's just a legend and
Oh,
in
yeah.
open water, but I didn't know she did pool swimming. So I'm just, I can't wait to see her there. And evidently there's one open water swimmer who I thought, Lynn never would have to migrate to the pool because she's done so much in open water and for open water. And yet I believe it's probably the Lynn Cox because it's the right age, and maybe it's not. Maybe Lynn Cox is just a common name, and I'm going to be disappointed. But
That's so
yeah,
funny.
yeah,
Yeah. Because I'm a huge Katie Ledecky fan. I just think I love watching her stroke. And I'm
yes.
like, why don't you just going to cross over and do some open water? Because with your stroke, you're going to crush it. And but she's still not done in the pool.
She said she never will. She
And
said
she
she
never
doesn't
will.
like open
I,
water.
I'm so disappointed by that. I'm like,
We all are. We all are because we've talked about that. I don't know who I've talked about on the show, but yeah, I mean, isn't she just a natural, like even just 10K? I mean,
oh,
just 10K, she would
that,
crush it.
that'd be like, with her tempo and her stroke, she'd be amazing. But I also learned from her, like she treats everything like a sprint, and you can't do that on a 20-mile swim. You can't. But what you can do is have that mentality is like you're building, 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 and you're, you know, trying to get better as you go towards the end and having that mentality. So I learned from the pool swimmers too. Yeah, for sure.
I don't think Katie has that gear right now to slow down. I think Katie swims, like all out in a mile. So, well, Steve, this has just been fantastic. I could talk all day with you, but in respect to time and not running over, thank you, Steve. It's
Thank you
been
so
fabulous,
much.
and I'll be cheering for you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Champions Mojo podcast. Would you consider leaving us a 5-star review on Apple? That's like getting a best time for us. Kelly and our team would be so grateful. See you next week for another boost of mojo.